Okay. Hello and welcome. Welcome everyone to the latest episode of the Conservation Careers podcast. My name's Nick from Conservation Careers. And joining me, as always now, are our kind of regular co-hosts. We've got Dr. Stephanie Schuttler from the world of fancy scientist. Hey, Stephanie.
Hello. Hi.
Happy
to be here.
Good to have you as always. And joining just by the skin of his teeth, having fallen off a bike, is Dr. Fernando Mateos-González. Hey, Nando.
Hello, hola, I'm alive. Barely.
With a slightly dodgy elbow, but you made it. Thank you for joining. Yeah. So we're on like episode, I don't know, 6 or 7. And today's topic we're going to talk about, actually, we'll probably introduce fully in a minute, is all about like events and networking and how to kind of make the most of those kind of face-to-face like networking opportunities, like in person. But I guess before we dive into that, what we typically do is like just quickly go around and sort of say what's been going on since the last episode. So, and for once, actually, something's gone on for me. So maybe I'll just kick things off in that I actually got out of the office. So about, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, I went up to the north of England where I did my undergrad and my postgrad as well, and spent the day kind of visiting a national nature reserve that I used to work at and volunteered at for like 6-7 years, called the Lower Derwent Valley. And I, since like leaving York, which was like a decade or more ago, I kind of sort of disconnected from the reserve and also the people a little bit, because they're all there, and they particularly my best friend is like the nature reserve manager of the particular area. He just doesn't leave the valley. That is his home. That is his community.
Territory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I moved down to where I am now because my wife's working where she is, and still actually is, and we sort of grown a network out down here. But I've always been meaning to kind of go back, and so I eventually had an opportunity like 2 weeks ago to kind of go back and say hi and spend the day. And I just had such a lovely day, like going back around the old reserve, like memory lane for me, spending time with my old friend Craig, seeing a few birds. And it's really, I find it really interesting. Like 10 years have passed or more, close to 15 maybe. Neither of us have changed that much, but actually the reserve kind of has. Like there's quite a different selection of birds there now. So previously there were no big birds of prey. There were no like buzzards. A buzzard would be a major sighting like once a year, like buteo, I guess you might know it as. Red kites as well, like big birds of prey. There were none. And yet when I was there must have been 15 or 20 buzzards kind of wheeling around the reserve, plus a couple of red kites coming through. And you realize, like, I don't know, like nature kind of can change quite rapidly, actually. And they should be there, and they have come back now. It's a good sign. But it's kind of nice to kind of see it across that kind of relatively short time that, things kind of come through.
Did you have any kind of memory flashback of here I did something, or here I found this animal, something that came back after 10 years?
Honestly, loads. Yeah. So I volunteered on the reserve like 6 years, and I lived with Craig for 4 of those years. He bought a house, and I was like, living with him. So I just went to my lectures at uni, and then every other minute was just me and Craig on the reserve. So like every little nook and cranny of that reserve like sparks a memory for me, like, oh, there was a corn crake there once, and we caught this water rail in this trap here, and I saw a really big perch in the river there, and it's all still like that. And with the barn owls that I spent a lot of time studying, they nest in like big old trees with holes in them, or big nest boxes that we put up. Or in the area, they actually have these really tall water towers, which is like a farm building with a really tall tower on the side of it, and a water tank at the top that I think used to feed the water for the farm. So around the area, there's probably maybe like 10 or 12 like tall water towers, and they're all redundant now. They don't have water in them, but the barn owls nest in them in the top. So almost every tower has like a pair of owls in. And I think about half of them have gone in the last sort of 10 years. So I sort of try around and go, oh, they used to be a tower. Oh, that's okay, right. And you sort of realize, barn owls have kind of disappeared in the UK, and then started to come back now in the last, decade or more. But it's lack of nest sites more than anything. And you sort of see them just slowly disappearing, and they need to be replaced by these boxes that, me and other people have put up over the years. Yeah. But loads of kind of old memories. It's nice to still be there. And one thing they're doing now that they didn't used to do, which I found quite exciting, they have these things called cannon nets. So they catch birds for ringing scientific monitoring purposes. They use nets, And there's different ways of doing it. Like one is mist nets, you put the nest up and birds fly into that. Another one is I can't remember what we called it, like a whoosh net, I think we called it, where you stretch a net over the ground with like bungee cords, and you feed an area to bring like particularly like geese and ducks in, and then you pull it and it flies over the top of them, and it pins them to the ground, and you can kind of go and collect them, put the ring on, measure, and then release them. But now they've got like projectiles. They actually use cannons with explosives to do this at distance, and it looks really fun. So yeah, it's like you literally like a bump and it goes bang, and it fires out these kind of big balls that pull the net at at a huge distance and huge speed, like over quite a big flock of birds. So I'm planning a trip up in
to capture whole flocks.
yeah exactly. Yeah, so I hope to go and kind of see that in action in the winter. So I had a trip out anyway. What's been going on with you guys?
For me, I actually did something kind of, I don't know, kind of risky or new in my career. I just was, and this is like something that a lot of people can relate to, but I was just feeling very overwhelmed and just like doing all the things. So I actually made a decision to stop doing some things. So I put a pause on my podcast and on my social media. And I'm just like really taking this time to work on some things that I haven't been able to in my business. So that's been interesting, and I've really enjoyed it. And from this, I'm going to do a podcast about like saying no to things and saying yes to yourself. So I've been really enjoying this time, like getting organized and structured. And a phrase that I heard from other entrepreneurs that I really liked is like, sometimes you need to slow down to speed up. So that's what I'm doing. I'm slowing down at the moment, and I'm going to speed up really fast.
That sounds nice. How did you choose? Like what you're going to focus on and what you're going to drop?
Well, so I'm developing this mentoring program, and I didn't feel like I could fit my full attention to that. So that was my priority. And just like where I'm getting the most engagement too. Like I think as science communicators, we need to cover like all the things. I mean, I definitely get engagement with my podcast and Instagram, but like right now, like my Facebook group seems to be having a lot of engagement. So, just deciding, like what it is that I need to focus on. And like hearing from some other people I follow that they also took breaks from their podcasts when they were making things, like that gave me permission to do that, because they have like, like they're like, these are like multi-million-dollar businesses, and they have like all these different assistants and stuff. And I was like, oh, well, if they're in creation mode and they're taking a pause and their business is obviously not falling apart, then I can do that too. So yeah, just like kind of like figuring out like where I need to put my attention.
Is there something you are dropping definitely, or is everything temporary?
Oh, it's all temporary. Yeah. I love doing the podcast, and I've thought about more episodes as I've stopped doing it. And I love doing Instagram and stuff like that, but also like I'm trying to figure out how to make it more efficient too, so I don't have to do all of the things. So working on training people to help me with that stuff.
Ah, nice.
And I also did some more filming for The Proof Is Out There. I can't talk about it, but
can't prove it.
More cryptid species.
Our very own TV star. How cool.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Watch this.
That was fun.
Yeah. Exciting. And Nando, what's going on at your end?
Oh, well, on the fun side, I have refitted my bike to be a touring bike at times. So I have another set of wheels and the saddlebags, and that's the reason I'm falling now from the bike so often. But this is great. This is something I was missing a lot. So I've been taking, usually I do Sunday and Monday, and then I go for a long trip and sleep somewhere in my hammock. And it's fantastic. Yeah, that memory I had of cycling long distances and having everything I need in my bike is I was missing it a lot, so that I'm enjoying greatly. And then on the professional side, and very fitting to our topic today, is that I'm both preparing several talks for conferences, and also organizing a conference, which is a major challenge. But I'm enjoying both things quite a lot. I'm really getting to the point of getting a bit stressed that is getting too close, as always, and I need results. Still some missing, but yeah, I enjoy it more and more, and so I love this topic. I'm very glad that we talk about it today.
What conference are you organizing?
Well, it will be, actually, we could even announce it here. Now that I think of it, if anyone is brave enough to come to the middle of nowhere in the Czech Republic, we are organizing a conference to try and collect examples of what works and doesn't work in conservation in human-dominated landscapes. And we are aiming to have a rather small niche conference with very few people, but allowing a lot of time to everyone to have lots of conversations, to make it really practical, for people to be able to share not only what works scientifically or, I don't know, in terms of results, but also how did you get funding, or which problems did you have with the, I don't know, accounting, if someone gets interested in that. So we want to really foster these conversations, and we will do that in a very nice venue in a little village called Velké Pavlovice, which is in South Moravia, which is a region very famous for its wines. So it will be, I don't know, like chatting during the day and then going for a nice dinner in the evening to a historical wine cellar and tasting the wine of the people around. It will be, I think it will be very interesting and nice. And you, of course, are welcome to join.
Sounds fantastic. Is it next month, or we're in October? So is it November or December?
It will be the 1st to the 3rd of December.
Right. Yeah. So there's about
maybe I can give you a link and we can put it in the show notes.
That sounds perfect. Yeah. So where we are, it's like about 5-6 weeks away. Yeah, maybe a bit more. And it links perfectly, as you said, to kind of the topic of today, which also you suggested, which I think is a really nice one, which is all about events. And it's about how we make the most of events as conservationists, but particularly, in terms of our careers, like, how can they help our events? How do we choose which event we might want to go to? Because there's a lot out there, potentially. And now there's one more. Thank you, Nando. And also, how can we just make the most when we're there, before, I guess, during and after as well. But maybe to kind of frame the topic a little bit more clearly, is it worth us just talking around, like, why are events particularly useful, or how can they be particularly useful, for people's careers? If you guys got any kind of thoughts around that?
Well, the main events that I've attended have been scientific conferences. So really you go to present your research, and when you're younger and you don't have your research established, you go to learn about other people's research and network. Oops, sorry. That's my dog's pill alarm. Sorry, I forgot to turn that off. So yeah, I mean, this is the way that scientists communicate with each other. We obviously do it through publications as well, but this is usually it happens before papers are published. So it's kind of like the earlier results. And also there's a lot of discussions that happen at conferences as well. Like there's the more formal, like, scientific research presentation, but then there's also symposia where it'll be around a topic. And then usually they have like a panel discussion or an audience discussion. So yeah, so it's the main way that it's one of the big ways that scientists communicate with one another.
Yeah.
I think we can talk to the why. No, why? What is it in you to go to an event of any kind, scientific or not? And the main reason, I think, is that most of your professional success, it depends on the people you meet. And that's basic. Is I mean, a lot of it depends on your preparation, your knowledge, or whatnot. But the real catalyst and the multiplicator is the people you meet along the way. And events or scientific conference, any kind of event, it's a perfect place for this because everybody wants the same. So it's a positive sum. You know you are going to go there, and anybody you talk to wants the same. They want the same thing as you want. So it will be very easy to create these connections and create this type 2 luck, I like to call, when magic things happen just by colliding.
It is interesting, isn't it? I've found that even just like a Zoom, like having a half-hour Zoom with someone I've only emailed before, I had kind of very loose connection with. Once you've had that kind of face-to-face, which you get, even more immersive in a kind of conference or workshop type setting, it becomes then more of like a personal relationship. Like, each other, you sort of part way to being friends, or certainly your acquaintances, and that barrier is just being removed, so that when you drop an email or ask for some information or whatever it might be, the chances are an order of magnitude, like you say, like the multiplier effect of actually, getting a positive response and sort of building those connections that are out there, and it makes all the difference. I sort of feel that.
In some of those events, you can get really close to other people. Like if you're attending a workshop, like I went to this one conservation genetics workshop in Montana. Middle of nowhere, Montana. It was close to Glacier National Park. And, it wasn't that long. I think it was like 2 or 3 days, but you eat all your meals together. You're presenting research, you're working on the same exercises, you get to know people well. And some of those people I'm still like Facebook friends with, and then you follow them through social media, and you feel like you know them. And then like if you need something professionally or even just to visit, like you've developed a relationship with them.
Another thing I like about events is the feeling of belonging. Like you go there and there is a bunch of nerds like you that can spend 3 days talking about feathers or or barn owls. That really makes you feel part of a community, and then everybody's enjoying that part, and then you end up dancing with your supervisor in the special dinner, and that really bonds. I like the feeling of community of these events.
That's true. And I guess the elephant in the room slightly is the events are a little bit self-promoty. It's a good chance for you to stand up either formally in front of a group of people and give a talk and say, this is me, this is what I do, and this is my research or whatever, or informally, in the kind of networking side events, but just to get yourself out there, and to be a friendly, known face that's doing good work that other people might want to work with as well. I guess that the bottom line. And I think early in your career, and almost at any stage you get, that can be quite daunting. I think particularly giving a talk at a big conference or just walking to a group of strangers, if you're an introvert and just talking to people you don't know, even if you're on the same boat, that can be, I think, quite a tricky thing to navigate. Yeah. And actually, we're talking just before the recording. I don't personally like events that much. It takes me quite a lot to switch from introvert to extrovert mode. And I think once I'm at an event, I kind of enjoy it. And afterwards, it's kind of fun. But the kind of feeling of going to one, I kind of always get a bit of a feeling of kind of dread. And I haven't chosen to go to an event for several years. I've been invited kind of to various things and gone along if I could, and sort of enjoyed that aspect. But I've not. And I think part of that is partly that I'm usually quite introverted, and partly that I never quite know how to fully get the most out of the events. Yeah, I've been to some really big ones. Like I used to work at BirdLife, mentioned that before. They had big world congresses where we had hundreds of people come together for like a week, and there'd be a dozen different plenaries going on at once, and this, that, and the other. And I just feel a bit like overwhelmed and lost. And I feel like I'm not making the most of this. I could be in this talk or that talk. I could be talking to this person, or I sort of go away having not done any of it particularly well, thinking I didn't make the most of that flight and that trip and everything, and I sort of come away with a feeling of like, I don't know, I could have done better. So I think this discussion actually is pretty useful for people like me who kind of know that they should be going to events, but they don't fully know how to kind of engage or get the most out of them. Yeah.
And I mean, that's not something that people teach, or at least in my world, I haven't been taught that. And I've gone to tons of events, tons of conferences, and I do like them. And I'm actually introverted too. So I do find them draining. And I've learned to like take time for myself during the events now. But yeah, I think it's something like the more events you go to, the more you learn like how to do them. But I think really setting an intention before you go, or just like some sort of objective, like what you want to get out of it. So before I went to graduate school, my advisor invited me to the conservation biology meeting. And my intention then was just to like learn, because I didn't even have a project yet. So I went to a lot of research talks. So really just like, and my advisor was genetics, or her work involved in non-invasive genetics. So I knew I was going to involve genetics. So I went to a lot of those talks, just trying to broaden my knowledge. And then as you get older in your career, then your shift or your objective tends to shift. So it used to be about like going to all the talks and learning. And now, like the people who are really advanced in their careers, they hardly go to any talks. And it's really about like all the networking, and not even at that point, they're pretty well connected, but also just like moving papers forward. What?
Catching up with their pals.
Yeah, catching up with people, their collaborators, or like having discussions and thinking of new paper ideas and stuff like that. So yeah, I think like setting an intention ahead of time, like if you're close to graduating or a couple of years out of graduating your PhD program, like you want to start meeting potential postdoc advisors, or if you're planning on working for a nonprofit like the World Wildlife Fund, and you know they're going to be there, start making those connections and start asking. Usually like at big events, they'll have booths and stuff like that. So yeah, planning ahead and like seeing like who's going to be there, what organizations are going to be there, and thinking about like what you want. And always think a couple of years out too. That's something I didn't do. Like I said, like people were asking me like, what am I doing next? And I'm like, I'm still like working on my dissertation. That's all I can focus on. But just like planting those seeds and starting those conversations.
Yeah, I think it's very good to go with a list, like a shopping list to your conference. And this list should include not only, well, mostly people, who is attending this conference that will be interesting to chat with and become friends, who not only potential supervisors, if we are talking about an academic setting, but also the students of these supervisors. If you, for example, are looking for a PhD, it's great both to meet the supervisor, the potential future supervisor, but also to talk to the students and being able to ask, so how is she or he? How is this person? How is working in the lab? How is living in this city? But also the good thing about this conference is that you catch up with the science at the edge, no? And then you really want to know where you are at, where is your research in comparison with all the other things that are going on. And then you get to know your peers, people that are working in parallel with you to push the knowledge forward. And then you write down, okay, this talk I have to go, this talk I have to go, and you plan it. And then you can prepare questions already before going to the talk. Oh, I'm really looking forward to learn why this is happening, or if they have seen the same in this other species. And by preparing both the people and the talks, apart from getting much more from the conference, you are also becoming much more memorable, and the person, it will be much easier for the people to keep track of who you are and maybe remember you in the future. As Steph says, that maybe 2 years from now there will be a postdoc opening or a PhD opening, and then you can contact again and have something in common. And something to remember. But this I think is very important to talk about the before and after the conference, like not only what you are going to do in the conference, but like connecting with people before the conference is great. Like trying to say, you know, for example, in an academic conference, you get very often a book of abstracts of all the talks that are going to be in the conference. And sometimes in this ISBE or this big conference, you get thousands of talks and posters and little abstracts. and no one is going deeply through those. But if the days before you send an email to someone you really want feedback from, and then you send your little abstract and you introduce it. Hi, I'm really looking forward to meeting you. Could you, at this time, I'm going to give this talk, or I'm going to be at this poster. If you will come and please give me feedback on this, I will appreciate it very much. Then you are focusing the attention of that person to your abstract, and then you can gather much more feedback.
I love that. I love that kind of strategic approach. I hadn't appreciated like how much effort you can put in before one of these events, like in terms of understanding who's going, what your opportunities are, and planning it out. I think a lot of people sort of organize it, think it looks fun, you know, get the trip, and then sort of the day before start looking through all the bumps, the abstracts, the talks, figure out where they might want to go. But actually, if you're strategic, like you both said, really, you can kind of be thinking, you know, well before that, and trying to line up meetings and stuff. Because again, going back to myself, I think to go into like a big room and sort of try and connect to, I put myself back in my kind of PhD days and thinking there are these professors that I'm holding up on a plinth that I'd like to speak to, but it's quite hard to sort of, you know, muscle up when they're all there with their friends, you know, in the side having catch ups and all that sort of stuff. And it's quite hard to kind of break the ice. You know, but I think if you've already connected to them beforehand, sent them an email, said you're going to be around, and ideally had a time and a place to meet, so you're not just kind of hoping for chance and luck. I like that idea, and I love the idea of like,
and especially for those big names, they're usually like super busy and they're really sought out. So sometimes they keep a really low profile. It's like really hard to physically find them. So yeah, if you can send an email ahead of time and create a meeting, that's a really great approach.
That is, I like that. And again, self-promoting. I love the kind of the idea of I'm doing a talk, come and have a look. Like trying to get the right people to. How many people do that? That's. So
I've never tried that one.
Yeah.
having a call to action, no, as we say. But even before that, many people, especially many of us who didn't have a lot of money to attend to conference, we had to find ways to get funding to go to the conference. And a very, very neat way to attend a conference is to be there as an organizer. And that, apart from getting a backdoor entrance to the conference, it gives you access to all those big shots and all the people that is going to speak, and then you can really have extra time with them and get more connections. So if you want to attend a conference but you don't have funding, you can write to the organizers and maybe offer yourself as a volunteer, and then go there and even offer some specific activity that you can do. Can I help with this, please? I don't have money to attend, but I really would like to go. And I will say more often than not, even if they don't give you an activity, you might get a free pass to the conference just by saying that expressing your interest. Oh, come, maybe you can help us with something, but don't worry, we will give you some entrance. And organizing. And then the next level to this is, if you want to meet certain people, you can create the conference yourself and organize the conference yourself. And this is very difficult and time consuming and it's horrible, but in the end you will be connecting with everyone, and it will look very good in your CV. It will give you superpowers of all kinds. You only have to work this introversion and see if you find all these ways to rest in between. But I think it's the ultimate hack.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think it's important for people to know that these events don't have to be huge. Like we're talking here about the SCB meeting, which is like thousands of people. But I went to conferences. I went to school in Missouri in Kansas, and it was really, they invited the local universities around them, and the university organized it. So that was a much smaller event. But you can even do something at your own university, like an ecology poster session day or something like that. Or we actually did something in the beginning of the year for new graduate students. We did like these timed talks. I think people had like 2 minutes or 3 minutes to present their research. So it can be simple stuff like that. It doesn't have to be like this international meeting.
Nando, with the meeting that you're organizing, the one that have you actually organized any in the past too? Because what I'd like to hear a little bit more about is like, how easy is it to organize one of these events? If someone's sat there thinking, actually, I wouldn't mind like a meetup for say 20 people around this topic that's important to me, you know, what are the nuts and bolts that go together? You know,
I think what Stephanie just said is key. Like, you don't need to create a monster. And I have organized I think an event on ants before.
Ants.
I have, because I happen to know people working on ants, and then I said, oh, I need an excuse to bring them to Barcelona. So I create an event for ants. But also like my own research, we wanted to bring people to the Natural History Museum in Barcelona. And so then we create some little behavioral ecology thing. And then sometimes it's the other way around. I want my friends to come from other, I don't know, colleagues I had in Sweden when I was working in Sweden, and then I wanted them to come visit. And if someone comes visit to my place and I'm working, and they give a talk, it's like a given. Like so then you can, if you invite enough friends, you can all of a sudden create a seminar in, I don't know whatever your friends are specialists about. And then once you have that, what we call the minimum viable product, I have an event with talks about, let's say, ants. Then you get that, and then you go further, and then you ask other people, like the administration in your university, if they will be willing to give us a bigger room, or maybe provide some refreshments, and then you keep growing from that. But I will say the best is to get first interesting people to talk, and then you keep on growing from that. In the university, it should be easy because there is always someone that has organized one before that you can go ask, and then say, could we organize one on this topic that interests me instead, that I'm planning to do my PhD in. Yeah. And then you can, and then I will go to all the local businesses around, like, I don't know, supermarkets or whatever, and ask for a sponsorship and say, we are going to do an event. We expect these people to attend, this number of people. Would you be willing to have a stand and maybe give us a box of cookies, whatever? Mm-hmm. And then they can have a poster there or whatever. And then you keep on growing from that. Nice. But if not, I mean, just to start, I think offering to the organizers of a bigger conference your help, I think is a great way to start.
Yeah. And as you say, it's great for your CV, and it's good for you personally, because I think it gives you a specific role, I think, at that event as well. Like your job is to do this. And so for me, I wouldn't get that feeling of slightly being lost. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm in a position, and this is good for me, and I'm networking the right people. I like the idea of organizing an event though. And it made me think, like, maybe an easier way of doing it is just to organize events as like a side event on a bigger event. So if there's like a big event going on, absolutely, you organize like a little side meeting. Like, everyone's there anyway. They've all organized their own transport. They're all there for a reason that you share. Maybe you can have like a little side event or a meetup or whatever you want to call it, that is, just in the evening or in lunchtime or whatever, and try and get people to that thing, and then kind of, have something around that. The organizers will probably be wide open to that, I would think.
I was just saying it can be unofficial too. And like, one of my big tips is to be on Twitter for conferences, even if you are not really interested in science communication. Twitter is fantastic for networking. You can network with people without ever meeting them. You learn about things that aren't advertised. So basically every conference has a conference hashtag, and I use TweetDeck with conferences. So I have like a whole column devoted to that conference hashtag, and I would, I scroll through it throughout the day. And yeah, you can organize like an informal meetup for lunch for people who are interested in genetics. And that's a great way. You don't really have to plan anything. Just maybe like reserve a big table and have people introduce themselves, but you don't need to plan refreshments or get sponsors or anything like that. And it's just a really great way to not be lonely at conferences too. Like I was kind of an oddball in my lab. I had all these different interests and I didn't quite fit into one conference. So I went to a lot of conferences by myself. And a lot of people go to conferences as a lab. So like everyone in the lab will go and the advisor will go. And in some ways that can actually be bad for you because you don't really get out of your bubble. You're kind of like with your lab mates all the time. So if you go alone or if you force yourself to get out of that bubble, Twitter is a great way to do that because you'll see things like, oh, I'm going to lunch. Does anyone want to go with me? Like, because people are just there alone. And then, or they'll say things like some of the bigger names on social media, they'll say like, I'm going to lunch here. Like, if you want to join me, join me. And then you'll go and there's a group of like 20 people and it's just a great way to meet people.
That's nice. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier about like being good to yourself and having time off as well during conferences. I think that's really important. Yeah, I remember one where I just went and had a nice bath in the middle of the day and then like re-emerged in the afternoon and got back and stuck into it or went for a walk or something. I think that's really important, right?
Yeah, I've learned over the years quality over quantity. In the beginning, I tried to do everything and you get burned out. And then you just realize too, like not all of it is worth it for you to do. I think, like you said, it's also important for you to enjoy yourself. A lot of these conferences are in really cool places. It's important to take time off and to explore the city or go to reserve. And actually, that's a great way to meet people too. Like you would be surprised how many people from the conference you bump into doing stuff like that. Usually the bigger conferences, they always have field trips too. So that's another great way to meet people unofficially. And you just never know like who's going to be helpful. Like you think they have nothing to do with your interests. And then a couple of years later, so like you've changed your interest or they're in a new role or something and you've maintained connections and it kind of works out for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. What you mentioned earlier before about if you don't go with your lab, I think even if you go with your lab group, it's a great tip to go and sit with someone else, for example, in the conference dinner, to go alone by yourself and putting yourself in other situations for a little bit and then you get that rest, that social rest. But if you do it for a little bit, you get to be yourself without any expectations from your non-mates. And then you have to go out there and talk to other people. It's impossible not to. Or if you go to one of these field trips, maybe you have to sit with someone else on the bus and then you get to talk. And then it's very nice after that field trip when you cross in from conference room to conference room and you know who went into the excursion with who went with you to the excursion and then you have that connection already and it's much easier to connect.
I have a controversial tip. So a lot of people, when they go as labs, they will go to each other's talks to support them. And that's great to do. But if there's a talk you really want to see or an event you really want to go, I recommend you don't do that because you can see your lab mates talk anytime. They probably gave you a practice talk in the lab. So you might want to have a conversation with them or something. But I think if it's you're giving a talk, like it might be just worth saying to your lab mates, like, if there's something else you want to go to, I totally understand because yeah, you guys know each other's work and it's great to offer support, but you're not going to be able to do any of these other experiences again.
Yeah. And to be honest, it takes the pressure off slightly. I think if your friends are there watching you, it just raises it up a touch, doesn't it?
I always would get most nervous presenting in front of my advisor and my lab mates. So like if you're in a room full of strangers, it's good.
Go away. Yeah. Well,
the only good reason for the advisor to come to your talk is that he or she can later introduce you to your future postdoc advisor. And that's another tip for introverts. Like you don't have to crash all the ice yourself. Like sometimes it's nicer just to have someone introduce you and all these things. It can be even another person. Hi, have you heard about I just read your abstract, and that reminded me of this friend of mine who has a similar talk. You should meet. And then you get help from someone else. And also it feels easier when you are introducing someone else. It takes the pressure of you. I mean, it's not the same to introduce yourself than to introduce someone else. So you can pair up like a wingman and then get to each other to introduce other people.
I like it. I like it. Well, I'm sort of conscious of time as always, and I'm very sort of thankful for your time as well. And maybe one way of sort of wrapping the topic up a little be to like think about how do you make the most of the event after the event. You talked about a little bit before, Nando, about before, during, and after. Yes. But the event doesn't necessarily have to finish when you all say goodbye and go home and you're back at your desk. Are there things that people should be thinking about, like in terms of the aftermath, in terms of making the most, or connecting with opportunities that presented themselves, or any thoughts around that?
I think one good way to think about conferences is, I used to think like people were my competitors. Like if they were doing elephant research, it's like, oh no, they're really similar to me. And like, like we're in competition with each other. And I think, like grant funding and stuff kind of makes you think this way, but I've learned over the years, it's so much better to think of people as your collaborators. So like when you start those conversations at the conference, like think about how you can work together. Is there like a review paper that you can write together? Or is there a symposium that you can organize for the next conference on, elephant behavior? And then you can invite all the top researchers to speak at that conference. So I think, like thinking ahead and continuing discussions on Twitter. So the conference hashtag usually goes for a little while afterward, and continuing to talk to those people virtually or online that I've met people on Twitter, both first on Twitter and then in real life, or just like completely on Twitter. Like I just met them at conferences on Twitter. And we've become friends. And I know some people have had papers come out purely from Twitter. They never met in real life. So there's lots of things that can happen after the conference.
Yeah, I met someone on Twitter who's a lecturer at university, and they invited us to go and speak in the department. And now that's sort of like a regular thing. And these connections, although they feel very ephemeral, like a little tweet, they can go somewhere if you're open to it. Thank you.
Something I have done to continue connecting with people is to ask for the slides or their talks or a PDF copy of their poster. But especially this Twitter thing is the best. Like that, I try to get the Twitter of everyone and in the conferences.
Yeah, you need to kind of go around handing out business cards or something. That's very 1980s now. Oh, that's great. Sorry,
a lot
Stephanie.
of people, just quickly, a lot of people, a lot of conferences have their handles, your Twitter handle written on your tag, but if they don't, a lot of people just write it in. So they just look at your name and know who to follow. Cause like mine's Fancy Scientist, which is very different than my name, Stephanie Schuttler. So a lot of times people will like look at my name and they have no idea who I am, but they're like, oh, you're the Fancy Scientist. So putting your handle on your name.
In my talks,
it's a good tip.
I put it also in the slides when I'm giving the presentation. In the first one will say tweet while I talk. Like if I see you using your phone, I don't mind, as long as you are tweeting about my talk
in a nice way. Who is this guy?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your advice with the audience today. I find it personally really valuable too, like thinking about events, and maybe I need to kind of start thinking about maybe attending a few more, because I feel kind of more excited about them. And maybe that's something for the audience too. Like if you've been inspired about events and some of the things you've heard today, maybe it's worth as a next step, just go and see if there are any events locally to you, or a topic that's particularly of interest to you that's out there. There are hundreds and hundreds of events going on, and fingers crossed, COVID willing, there'll be more and more kind of opening up into the future. So, you know, if you've been inspired, go and have a look, go and find something, get involved. Yeah, and kind of make the most of those events for your career. As we wrap up, like, guys, where should we send them if they want to find out a little bit more about you guys? I'm not going to do tips today because I think I always put you on the spot. I haven't got a tip ready either, so then that's fine.
Oh,
so
I just thought of a good tip.
Oh, go on, please. Go on.
You have to do it.
You've got it. You got it. Go on.
I was just going to say, we've been talking about this kind of seriously, like, you know, like really think about it ahead of time and be intentional about who you want to talk to, but also just kind of along lines of have fun. And you don't have to spark super serious conversations all the time. Like you could just be, you know, standing in the lunch line or in a coffee line and say like, you know, like just start talking to people and just be like, oh, what'd you think of the keynote this morning? Or, you know, or even just like talking about lunch. Like it doesn't have to be this like super scientific conversation all the time. And then, you know, you start talking about research and yeah, like we're people, scientists are people and people in this field are people. So yeah, it doesn't have to be super serious the entire time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And we've talked in the past, I think, you know, the perspective that I try and take is it's just about making friends. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Networking is such a dirty word, you know,
Yes.
but it's just about making friends, you know, it really is. And, you know, we all want to do that and we're all good at that in various ways. So yeah, that's really, really valuable. Yeah, thank you. Have you got a final tip, Nando? You don't have to. I'm just giving you the opportunity in case you do. I feel like we've shared a lot of tips, which is always why we do these things. But
I remember a little one. If you are putting a poster in a conference, you can have a little QR code.
Yeah.
And that connects to YouTube, for example. And YouTube, you present the poster, and then you go through. It can be a private YouTube link, a video that you don't show if you don't want to, but you should do it anyway. And then you can present the poster for when you are not sitting by the poster to present it. So then anyone that comes can watch you talk about your research excited, and then you can get those points.
I love that. And then you can just go down the pub. I can see where you're going. Yeah.
With the other mates.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's another QR code. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for your time, guys. If people want to find out a bit more about you, Nando, where should we send them?
Well, now we have talked so much about Twitter, Bioblogo, and that works also for Instagram.
Yeah. Bioblogger. Great. And if they want to find out about your conference, is there anywhere that people can go?
Yes, they can look for alkawildlife.eu.
Mm-hmm.
That's our NGO.
Alka is ALKA. Yeah. alkawildlife.eu. Brilliant. And Stephanie, if people want to find out more about you, where should we send them?
Just go to fancyscientist.com or Google Fancy Scientist and I'll come up.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks as always, guys, for joining. It's been great fun chatting, and we'll talk again.
Thank you for the chance.
Yeah, welcome. Talk again next month, and maybe one day we'll have an event together. You never know.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. If you did, then please do hit the subscribe button to get notified of new episodes as they drop. And also please give us a rating or a review, because it really helps us to get in front of more people. Now, if you want our help to get clear and get started and get hired as a professional conservationist, I recommend you enroll in our free online training program, exploring how to get a conservation job. So if you're a student, a job seeker, or a career switcher, you'll learn the golden rule about how to get started, the key mistakes to avoid, and also we'll answer your biggest questions. You can check that out at conservation-careers.com/free. See you soon.